Hello and welcome to Oban Airport on the west coast of Scotland in X-Plane 11, and on the tarmac we have the default King AIr C90 with the engines running. So let's jump in the cockpit. So what are we going to do today? Well, I thought this is not been planned very much, but I thought I'd have another go with the C90 and the autopilot, and maybe do something a bit more challenging, including a landing. So what I randomly decided to do is to fly from Oban to Glasgow. So this is Oban Airport up here, and this is Glasgow down here. It's not the flight's not too long, it's 48 miles, and so initially we will take off from Oban. I check the wind in a minute to see whether we take off to the north or to the south, and then we'll track this radial to Glasgow. That's the initial part of the plan, and then when we get to Glasgow, we have the fun of trying to follow this approach procedure. I don't know if I fully understand, but the basic outline is that we have to be careful with altitude, because there's obviously some quite high mountains and hills around Glasgow. So we got minimum safe altitudes here above 5,000 feet. So we'll need to approach. I think we're going to go 6,000 feet most of the flight. Approach above that, and the initial approach fix is here at the VOR, or there's also a NDB as well. So we're going to be arriving sort of from northwest here somewhere. So we're going to have to enter the hold at about 6,000 feet. Be a parallel entry, so we arrive at the holding fix and turn out in this direction, flying for 1 minute, and we'll start to descend. The procedure says that it's commenced from not below further, so I think we'll descend to 4,000 in the hold. I'm not sure whether we'll have to go around more than once. Then we will follow the CAT A and B bearing outbound here, 219 degrees, and we'll descend down to 3,000 feet initially, and then when we get to 4.4 miles from the VOR, we can then descend down to 2,400. When we get out here, we can turn back in and hopefully follow the ILS. So when we get near Glasgow, we're going to be pretty busy, and I'm not sure whether I'm going to be able to do all of this in this plane with trying to use the default autopilot, but we'll see how we get on. Okay, so first things first, we've got engines running. Let's check whether QNH is 1013, which we've already got set. We've got about an hour and a half worth of fuel, which should be plenty. I'm just going to hide the yoke. We've got auto feather arms. We've got prop sync off for now. I said we're going to go to 6,000 feet, so let's dial in 6,000 feet as our initial altitude for the autopilot. Okay, 6,000 set. We will set the display to show us wind speed, because that's quite useful. I'll turn the flight director on. I'm going to pre-engage the autopilot in heading mode, and as I'm expecting to still be climbing when I engage the autopilot, I'm going to go for AutoCell VS, and then using the autopilot data readout, which I've got on the screen here, I'm going to pre-select 800 feet per minute climb rate. Should be about right. So I think that's the initial autopilot arming done. I've got keyboard key bindings, as you can see from my previous video, to turn on the yaw damper and the autopilot, so we'll use those once we've taken off and got stabilised. Another thing that's different in this flight is I'm now using a joystick rather than a a yoke and throttle quadrant. So I've got a Gladiator Mark II, which recently received, and yeah, so far it's working great, but I'm still getting used to that as well. So we should see how it goes. Okay, so wind. Wind is basically from the east-northeast, so we need to take off to the north and then make a left turn. So just a slight repair to something there. Right, there we go. Okay, okay, right, so we are on low idle at the moment on the condition levers. That should be okay to get us moving slowly. Well, let's just go for a little bit of up trim. Okay, so if we release the brakes now, I'm just going to switch to head tracking at this point, just until we get ourselves ready on the runway. We have taxi lights on, all the other lights on apart from landing lights. I'm going to take off to the north, so we may as well head out here and head back to other end of the runway. Yeah, it's going to be partly a crosswind on takeoff. I'll just move the condition levers back forward now so we go a bit faster when we're taxiing down here. And I think we can probably now turn on our landing lights and turn off our taxi light. Something we haven't done is we haven't tuned in the Glasgow VOR, which we will be hoping to pick up after we've taken off and got high enough. So I will just do that. Let's just pull back the condition levers. We're going fast enough now, because we should have tuned in the nav radio before we left the stand. Let's just get ready for turning round. And we should have turned a bit further there to use more of the runway, but hopefully this will be enough. As it's a fairly short runway, I think I'll go for 1 notch of flaps on takeoff. Okay, VOR, let's have a look. We are going to use the Glasgow VOR at 115.4. So let's turn off head tracking, let's tune in our nav radio to 115.4. And initially we going by our Sky Vector route, we want 141 degree radial to, or well, it's actually the radial from the VOR, 141 degrees, or to the VOR, depending on how you look at it, 141 degrees. So I'm going to use the keyboard bindings to set a course, 141. I'm also going to align the heading bug with the runway heading. And as you'll see ahead of us, we've got quite a steep hill after the end of the runway. So I am going to take off and then turn left out over the sea. Okay. Should be good to go. Double check. We have landing lights on, we have auto feather on, we have prop sync off, we've got our altimeter set to 1013, we've got our initial altitude set, we have autopilot prime, we have flight director on, and we have 1 notch of flaps. So I think we're good to go. So let's advance the throttles and release the parking brake. And we can feel that crosswind. Rotating about now with 1 notch of flaps. And I'm going to put the gear up. And I'm going to put flaps up. And I'm going to start a turn to the left. I'm just going to pull back on the throttle slightly. And with the cloud base at 900 feet, we're going to be broken at least at 900. We're going to be in the clouds pretty soon. So we'll have to fly using the artificial horizon in a second. And we've got the Glasgow VOR now, which is handy. So we'll continue our turn to intercept the VOR, now using the artificial horizon as we're still got some contact with the ground. Not a very coordinated turn here. So I have my foot on the left rudder pedal. Now, just gonna straighten up here. And in fact, I'm going to descend in there for some reason. Let's just trim for about 1,000 feet for now. 1,000 feet per minute climb rate. It's still at quite a bank angle there, so let's get that sorted out. So be careful in cloud to watch your artificial horizon quite carefully. Okay, that's us sort of stabilised. Now let's set our heading pointer, because remember we left the autopilot in heading mode, so we don't want it to be wildly off when we engage it. So I'm now going to turn on the yaw damper and autopilot. So the autopilot should be maintaining 1,000 feet per minute climb rate for us. And we'll leave it on heading mode there for a second just to intercept the radio. As you'll see, we need to steer slightly to the left there to intercept. Just turn head tracking off. And we're above the clouds already, which is great. And we're climbing. We're at 3,500 feet. Okay, time to. Oh, actually, I don't think, and this is quite bad, I don't think I moved the condition levers out of idle position. So let's sort that out. The other thing we'll do is we'll bring the props back to, we're still climbing, so we'll bring the props back to 2,000 RPM. And again, you can use, if you don't have a quadrant, throttle quadrant with a prop lever, you can use keyboard binding F3 and F4 to change prop lever. So that's 2,000 RPM. I think now we'll change the autopilot to nav mode as we're close to intercepting the 141 radio. And the autopilot has decided to do a bit of unnecessarily sharp steering there. Yeah, I guess it knows what it's doing. It is telling us that we've got GOW VOR tuned in on nav 1, and it's giving us a distance of 42 nautical miles. Let's have a little look on the map and see what's happened so far. Actually, before we do that, we can now turn off our landing lights, and we can engage prop sync and we can turn off auto feather. And I'm hoping that we're about to turn to the right to intercept. Let's just check that we are actually on nav mode. Yes, we are on nav mode. So we should be turning. Yes, okay. It's a bit dramatic, but we're now turning to follow the 141 radial to Glasgow. And we've got a sort of wind from the side and the front there, so I guess our heading will be slightly to the left to follow the track. Okay, it's just align the heading bug, so if we need to switch to heading mode at any time we're ready. Okay, let's have a little look around. Yep, it's definitely above the clouds. It's nice and sunny up here, but not so good on the ground. So the fun part starts when we get nearer to Glasgow. Now, I do have an MSA of about, say, 5,000 feet. So we could start to descend, I guess, before we reach the initial approach fix here, if we wanted to. But actually I think I'll just leave us at 6,000 and then we'll descend in the hold. Now, when we're in the hold, we want to descend to 4,000 feet to commence the procedure. And I think we're okay anything above 3,000, to be honest, from the holding point when we start to fly out. So stay at 6,000 for now. We're going to pre-select 4,000 as the next altitude that we're going to want to go to. So let's dial that in now. Not in that mode. If you press the button in, then it moves hundreds. If you click it out, it moves thousands. So 4,000 will be our next target altitude. We're at cruise now, so we can bring the prop back to 1900 RPM, where it will stay until we commence the descent. Hopefully on the ILS, if we make it that far. Now, let's have a look at the map. So you can see we departed Oban, turned out over the sea, and then did some kind of spectacular zigzagging to get onto our course to Glasgow. So that could have probably been done a bit more smoothly with a heading mode rather than switching to nav mode straight away. And this is our target down here. We've got a good cruising speed now. In fact, yeah, no, let's leave this. Our ITT is pretty close to the red line, so I'll leave the throttles where they are for now. In fact, you know, if you were doing a more leisurely cruise, you'd probably, I guess, you would bring them back a bit to lower this temperature a bit further. Let's just have a look outside for a minute. You can see the tops of some of the mountains through the clouds there. Oh, in fact, we can see some ground as well. It's quite cool. I suppose we could try and get ATIS for Glasgow just to see what's going on. ATIS 129575 according to the chart. Let's see if that will work. Sometimes ATIS seems to work for me and sometimes it doesn't. 129575.
Glasgow Information Golf 1500 Zulu weather. Wind 070 at 11, visibility 10. Sky conditions 900 overcast, temperature 14, dew point 0. Area QNH 1013. Arriving runway 05, departing runway 05. Advise on initial contact you have Golf.
Okay, good. So 1013 we're already at. Runway on our QNH, runway 05 is the runway that we have already selected. One thing to try and remember is our transition altitude is 6,000 feet, in which we're already at 6,000 feet, but in fact, as the QNH is 1013 anyway, we don't actually have to change anything. So basically, we'll just make sure that we always set to the current Glasgow QNH, which is, or area QNH is still 1013, and that's fine. So when we reach the VOR DME, which we've got 20 miles to go, so we're getting there fairly quickly. What we need to do then is we're coming in like this, we need to get into the hold. Now the hold is actually a right hand hold, but we can't sort of turn like this, it'd be too sharp, so we'll do a parallel entry, which means that we fly to the fix and then we turn out, basically in reverse. So we follow the inbound course in reverse for 1 minute, and then we turn. I guess we turn for 1 minute, standard rate turn, and then we will track back towards the fix. So that means we need to turn. We'll go to heading mode when we're close, and we'll then turn to a heading of 49 degrees, and we'll also move the radial on the VOR to 49 degrees as well. We'll start the timer for 1 minute, and then we'll try and do a standard rate turn for 1 minute. The timer, there is a kind of clock thing over here, and you can cycle. It seems to have different modes like time of day and chronometer and stuff. It's currently, I think, in chronometer mode, and this button here starts a timer and stops it and then resets it. So I'm going to try and use that. We'll see how it goes. Okay, we're approaching quite rapidly now. Actually, we're only 13.6 miles. Let's have a look outside, see if we can see anything. Ooh, something more useful to be doing than looking outside is we can tune the ILS in on our nav radios. So this is the VOR DME, but there's also an ILS which we can use hopefully to give us guide slope and location for landing. So that's on 110.1. So let's tune in 110.1 as our standby nav radio frequency, so we have it ready. Okay, back to what we need to do next. Switch to heading mode, 49 degree course, so it's the left turn to 49 degrees, VOR to 49 degrees, and start the timer. I'm not quite sure what order we're going to do all that lot in. But when we're about 5 miles away, I will switch to heading mode to get that ready. So we can't really see the ground now, so we're going to have to hope that all these instruments and bearings work out, and hopefully if the 900 feet means we should once we descend on the ILS, we should then be visual before we reach the minimum descent altitude. Okay, 7 miles. do have our heading bug lined up with our current heading, again using keyboard shortcut keys to move the heading bug around. We're also going fairly fast. I think in the hold we probably want to be doing more like 180, so I will start to slow down as well. In fact, let's do that now. Let's pull the torque back to about 8,000, about halfway on the torque gauges. That should slow us down to around about 180. We'll see. Now I'm going to switch to heading mode. So we're following our heading bug. We'll also, another thing we'll do is we're showing the radio to the VOR here. I'm just going to make sure that we've got the VOR direction pointer enabled as well. So what that does is that we've now got this magenta line which will show us always, which will always point to the VOR. And it's also what we've got on this display as well. 2.5, so we're still going to want to turn left to 49 degrees. I'll do that one. I think when this reads about 0.5 we'll start our turn. You see we're actually sort of starting a slight error now as we get close to the VOR being on heading mode. And we've got things starting to swing round now, so I am now going to turn the heading to 49 degrees. I'm tracking out for a parallel entry to the hold. I'm also going to start the timer. We're going to fly for 1 minute, and I'm going to go for 49 degrees on the course as well, so that we can at least try and track that. So that will help us if there's any wind blowing us off. So we can see we want to turn slightly further left to be on a 49 degree course. It won't probably be exact. So 37 seconds on the timer. We're a bit off on the 49 degree course, but it should be good enough. Okay, that's 1 minute, so I'm now going to make a 180 turn using the heading bug. And once we've completed the turn, and then going to head straight for, we should be descending, and we're probably going to be too late now. Okay, alt cell, indicated airspeed, reduce the throttles, let's start to descend. I don't think we're going to be low enough, but we'll see. Also, we don't want to speed up too much while we're in the hold as well. Actually, I think we'll be okay on the descent, although we should have started it as soon as we entered the hold. Okay, I'm just gonna bring our heading round now to aim for the VOR, which is the magenta line. So we're now sort of diagonally flying back to the holding point fix, probably. So in theory we've gone up here, we've turned around and we're aiming back for here. And then when we've reached the holding point fix, which is the VOR itself, which we'll know when this distance basically goes down near zero, we'll then turn to 219 degrees So we'll make a left turn to 219. Sorry, a right turn to 219 here, so that we are then on the outbound course to get ready for the ILS. And actually our altitude's fine now. And there we go, we're basically at the VOR now, so I'm going to set a new course of 219. And we'll just turn to get onto that, and we need to fly out on this course for until we get to 10.7 miles from Glasgow. There we go. We are on it, and we can switch to nav mode. We can now descend as well to 3,000 feet. So go back to Alt Cell, indicated airspeed. Indicated airspeed is probably not the best one to use because we're going quite slow. We'll manage. We'll throttle back. We can put our indicated airspeed up a bit if we use the right buttons on the autopilot, but we'll hold at around about 150. Okay, so we are now on this section of the procedure, heading out, turn at 10.7, but before that, at 4.4 we descend to 2400. So we're at 3.9, we're not quite at 3000 yet. There's 4.4, so I'm going to change this down to 2400, which is the final altitude we want to reach as we're still descending. Also at this point, we've got a small amount of time, I'm going to turn on our landing lights in preparation. I'm going to turn off prop sync and turn auto feather back on, just so we get some of this stuff done in advance. Okay, we're fine now until we get to 10.7 miles from the VOR DME, when we need to make a right turn to 49 degrees to get onto the ILS approach track. So we just got to watch our altitude and speed now. Because when we level off at 2400, we'll probably want a little bit more power back on to keep our speed up to. Let's keep our speed up to around about 140, 150. Just check the QNH 1013. This is still correct. Obviously, we should be probably using the 80s for that. Okay, we're nearly at 2400, and we stay at 2400 until we for the turn, and then when we come back in, once we reach a certain distance, then hopefully we'll be onto the ILS glide slope. So our turn is at 10.7, we're at 8.7. Speed's dropping, so I'm just going to give us some more throttle. Put our torque back up so we can get back to about 140. 9.4. We need to start turning at 10.7. Let's get back into heading mode so we're ready to do the turn. So at 10.7, so it's actually 10.7. We're going to turn to 49 degrees. That's going to be a right turn to 49 degrees. Still can't see anything outside. There's 10.7. Let's turn to 49 degrees. Oops. I'm going to turn too far, or we'll go past the halfway point and the thing will start to turn the other way. So we go at 49 degrees, and we'll change our course to be 49 as well, and then we'll also switch to the we'll switch to the ILS as well when we get the turn completed. We're okay on speed, we're okay on altitude for now. We've already done prop sync, we've already turned on our landing lights, we've turned on auto feather. And I really hope the ILS works here, because it's cloudy, so if we don't have the ILS, I'm not sure we're going to have much luck. Well, I mean, we'll have to descend just on the glide slope, but let's hope we don't need to do that. Okay. Turn the heading to there for now. Let's try switching to the ILS, and it looks pretty good, so I'm going to go for nav and approach mode and hope this works. It says localizer here, so that's good. We have glide slope pointer here. We are hopefully tracking the inbound ILS course. All we're going to do now, speed's about right for the start of the descent. I'll just throttle back slightly. So we should start to descend at 7.7 miles, according to 7.3, because we're now using the ILS, the distance from the ILS. So at 7.3 we should start to descend. I don't know what our minimums are. They're on the chart. 800 feet maybe. Glide slope pointer is coming down. When it's close to the middle, I'm going to drop the gear, and soon after that we'll add a notch of flaps. As we drop the gear, that will help to slow us down, and then flaps will help to slow us down as well, and we'll probably throttle back slightly to about 4,000. Okay, gear going down. Gear should have been going down. Yeah, gear is down. It's one notch of flaps. We go props on fine, full pitch, which also helps slow us down and prepares us for maximum performance in the event of a go-around. So we're looking for sort of 90 to 100 knot speed as we approach the threshold of the runway. We're still at 2,000 feet. We can't see yet, but we've got a bit to go. I think about, let's say, 800 feet, which should be, if the cloud base is 900, then it's going to be close. But 5.4 miles, so we're okay. Speed's okay. We have one notch of flaps in. We'll put second notch in when we get a bit nearer. So I go for the second notch now. Just use the power now to make sure that we're maintaining between 90 and 100 knots. So it's good at the moment. 1400. Let's hope we start to see the ground soon. In fact, yes, I can see it. I can see it to this side anyway. So it's obviously broken cloud, like it said. And we can just start to see the ground ahead of us. It's good. Hopefully we'll see a runway soon. Yep. And so we can continue. A little bit more throttle. Only thing left to do now is to disengage the autopilot when we get a bit closer. This is looking good. And thanks for the lights on the runway, that's great. So disengage autopilot, land, reverse thrust, and some braking. Nice low cloud base. I think the runway here is probably plenty long enough for this plane. I'll give you the motorway there, so I thought M8 maybe, something like that. Okay, I'm going to disengage the autopilot. Still getting used to flying with the joystick, so that's my excuse already. And just power back slightly now. And we're down. And reverse thrust, and it's clear reverse thrust. I just got that mapped to a toggle on the joystick. And does this look like a taxiway? Not particularly, so let's keep going. I mean, it might have been. I'm not sure it's one from our direction. I should really look at the airport chart. Let's put flaps up while we're doing this. Let's switch to head tracking. And there's a taxiway here and to the right. Let's go for the right, looks a bit more promising. I only want to get off the runway for now. I'm not going to bother with the full parking experience. Sure, I should have a look at the map, see how our approach looked. So let's just cross this threshold line and pull over here for a second. And something else we can do is we'll go back to low idle on the condition levers. Switch off head tracking. Right, let's have a look at the map. Let's see what we did. So, oh my goodness, here's our, I'm not quite sure what this is. Here's our approach in from Oban. This is where we reach the hold. This is our outbound leg of the hold. This is a rather poor attempt to head back, so the parallel entry to the hold. So what we should have done is flown around here and then flown back to the holding fix. So that was wrong. That I should have probably worked out what the angle was and followed that rather than just kind of trying to track the VOR. So we're a bit off there, so we're outside the hold. Then we tracked out, which is okay, and back in on the ILS. So generally not too bad. I'm not sure what these other things are. I think these are other planes or something, because we certainly didn't fly there. So the only thing wrong here really is that the hold wasn't done very well. I mean, this bit of the hold looks kind of okay. I mean, comparing it to the actual procedure, let's see if we can get that back. Yeah, this is the outbound leg of the hull. I mean, it doesn't even look right, but then the angles might be different. Or I might just have flown it at the wrong angle. It's supposed to be 49 degrees. Yeah, and so we were off. I suppose that's because we were trying to turn on to the radial rather than fly the heading, which you should have done. So yeah, our whole hold is offset from where it should have been. It should have been more like this. So obviously, depending on how much the high ground there is here, that could have been dangerous. I'm not sure how much leeway they give you on a hold. I think you're meant to stay inside the hold anyway. So we just finished by having a look at the landing. Let's see, where was our landing point? Let's go back to about here. I'll have a look outside. Some nice scenery here from Orbix True Earth GB. Coming in Glasgow. Let's speed things up a little bit. You can see the low cloud base and the motorway. And Glasgow. And the hills to the north. And the hills back towards Oban, the way we came. Actually, that's sort of back towards Oban, but anyway. You're at the end of the runway. And the shadow on the runway. And we're down. So there we go. Thank you for watching, and hopefully this might have helped a bit more with using the autopilot on this plane. Bye for now.